Good afternoon, everyone. Larry Gordon coming to you from the offices of the Five Towns Jewish Times. We've been on a little bit of a hiatus, not because we didn't have what to report to you about, just making some technical improvements in our mass media operation here. We are reporting on a number of issues in this week's Five Towns Jewish Times that we wanted to share with you. Have the Dovey, have the camera follow me. I'm going to sit down. Okay, and so we are going to share with you, for those of you not in the immediate area that want to read the Five Towns Jewish Times, which came out this morning, a really sparkling, jam-packed issue on a series of issues of importance and interest to Jewish communities around the world. For those of you in New York that are interested in these things, our front page picture is that of New York State Governor Andrew Cuomo, who was in the Five Towns yesterday. That was Wednesday. He was at the Hebrew Academy of the Five Towns in Rockaway called HAFTR, and he was here to present a grant of $2.1 million that's going to be divided over 45 schools for security purposes in this advanced day and age of threats in schools. It's an overall $25 million grant that is being divided up amongst schools in New York State, with $2.1 being specifically allocated to Long Island, including the schools here in the Five Towns. On our front page this week, two stories. One is called The Rebbe's Perspective, written by Rabbi Pesach Schmerling, the Chabad Shliach in Far Rockaway, New York. And Rabbi Schmerling writes about his reminiscences and recollections about the Lubavitch Rebbe, as on the cusp of the 24th yahrtzeit of the Rebbe, which is marked this coming Shabbos. The 3rd of Tammuz is when the Rebbe passed away 24 years ago. We are sitting here in Cedarhurst, New York, which is just about 5 miles from where the Rebbe is buried, at New Montefiore Cemetery, and a large group of young men, and I'm sure young women as well, will be walking on Shabbos morning to the cemetery. I know you're just thinking to yourself that you don't go to cemeteries on Shabbos, but there's quite an infrastructure there to accommodate thousands of guests, and I guess you have to speak to your local Chabad Shliach or a local rabbi to get some clarification about the practice. On a more local note is our Five Towns Jewish Times endorsement of Alex Edelman, the incumbent mayor of the village of Lawrence, who is running next Tuesday against Michael Fragan, a village trustee in the village of Lawrence. And it's turning out to be quite a competitive race, a bit historically unprecedented. If you know anything about the village of Lawrence, if you care about things like that, the village of Lawrence was incorporated, as is pointed out in the article, back in 1897, 121 years ago. And in the history of the village of Lawrence, there's never been a contested election for the mayor of the village. Usually, as I pointed out in our endorsement of Mr. Edelman, usually what takes place here, by virtue of the fact that we're a relatively small community, like-minded people for the most part, people that have the same values and interests, and the fact also that the government officials, the local government officials, the trustees, and the mayor serve on a voluntary basis. There's no remuneration, no compensation whatsoever for the enormous amount of time they put into the task of overseeing the management of the village. The tradition has been that the mayor is extended the courtesy to run unopposed, and that is unfortunately being not violated. I don't want to say violated, but that string, so to speak, is being interrupted this year in a contested election, which is going to take place on Tuesday, June 19th. So, I mean, you can read about if you're interested, you can read about the various nuances and details of the election. We are trying, hopefully sometime on Monday, to have both candidates here for a live discussion of their differing views on village business. and why they're running for mayor, why they want to be mayor at this juncture, why Mr. Edelman is seeking an additional term, why Mr. Fragan, after 10 years as a village trustee who has done an extraordinary job, it feels that at this particular juncture, it's his time to run against the incumbent and be mayor. So, as usual, there's an extraordinary amount of things happening in the Jewish world, and we're going to try to visit with you via this forum more frequently in the coming days and weeks. In the meantime, thank you for joining us. This is Larry Gordon in the offices of the Five Towns Jewish Times in New York. Have a good evening.